Hello and welcome to day 24 of the HUBZone Small Business Summit. We are so excited to have you guys here with us today, and you're in for a real treat because this isn't just a typical session. You're going to be actually hearing from key industry experts on a number of key topics impacting the small business community. So you better buckle up because there's going to be a lot going on during this session. Now, as you heard, this is being recorded. So we encourage you guys to be interactive and post any of your questions or concerns in the Q&A function and chat box. I will be monitoring that with the support of our wonderful moderator, Robert Brook. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Robert Brook to take over here. He's the director of the Federal Funding Program for CIT, and he is going to be ushering us through this amazing presentation today. So thank you again, guys, and let's get started.
Sure, and thank you. Can you hear me okay?
You sound loud and clear.
Perfect. And thank you for the opportunity to moderate this great panel. I've been working with these folks for several months now in preparation for this, so we're really proud to be able to do this today. Again, I'm Robert Brook. I'm the Director of Federal Funding Programs at CIT. We're going to talk a little, I'm going to high level of what I do at CIT. We're a state-funded nonprofit here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, working with small businesses to help them grow their technology in their business. And my role as in Director of Federal Funding is to working with a lot of early-stage government contractors. So we'll talk a little about that in a second. We're going to talk a little bit with this. We've got 3 panels today. And the first one's going to talk about some of the back office systems that are going to be, and the goal today is to help you become more competitive in federal proposals and other contracts you're bidding on, and to be a more successful company, and to try to find ways to make your company and your bids shine above others, because it's always competitive. And we want to make sure that each of these talks today is going to talk about ways to help you become more competitive in various aspects of your business. Talk about some back office systems, thinking about really how you're presenting that. What do you have? Did you have what you have is enough, or are there more you really need? Tips on building a more compliant GovCon business, and there's some a neat webinar series that the AtWork Systems folks are giving that we're going to talk about, and you kind of see where you might be able to fit into those. And then finally, last but certainly not least, is the issues that have been out there for a while and sort of pending for a while, is the finding cost-effective solutions for the CMMC certification requirements, and which affects all government contractors eventually. Primarily right now, it's more of a DoD thing, but they will all be having requirements for that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this screen share quickly, and then screen share another. And it's going to cover just a quick little overview and a little video here for you.
You maximize it.
As a small government contractor, you face major challenges. You need to know how to operate and compete in a lowest price, technically acceptable environment. You must understand and meet the government compliance requirements. And you need to build a BD strategy to address emerging category management requirements. Business as usual is not the answer. Your people, systems, and processes must be aligned to lower your cost while improving competitiveness. We've designed the OneLink SaaS platform to address these challenges. OneLink is an integrated suite of tools optimized for government contracting. OneLink includes a complete and integrated set of applications that ensure your business operations are streamlined and compliant. OneLink includes integrated cybersecurity compliance tools that provide visibility across the entire certification lifecycle, including assessment, remediation, and certification, dramatically reducing the cost and risk of obtaining certification. And finally, we offer training that helps you understand how to manage the risk and cost for all contract types, enabling you to win while being more profitable. Contact AtWork Systems to let us assist you to become a more successful government contractor.
Great. Well, that kind of provides some context is what we're going to talk about today. Go ahead and where that is. There it is. Share.
You know the best place in your house to potentially save money, not the garage, not the kitchen, but
sorry
your
about that.
roof. If your roof doesn't have solar panels on it, then you may be throwing
Okay, sorry about that. Promotional commercial for other folks. Hey, so we're going to go a little bit more into the presentation here, and first to provide a little bit more context as to why I'm moderating the panel. So as I mentioned to you, I run the Federal Funding Assistance Program here at the Center for Innovative Technology. My role is to work with companies to help them learn about and apply for the federally funded Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs. These are funding programs, over almost $4 billion available each year. And the reason I'm going to provide a quick, what I would say, a tutorial on steroids on this is because Mark is one of our panelists, small business panelists today, and he has an SBIR, and he is a early stage, hopefully growing small business. And so he's sort of a proxy for a lot of folks here to kind of provide some relevance as to understanding a little bit about SBIR and really where his stage is in his company. So you can kind of put yourself and compare yourself to where he is and to see where, why he's making some decisions on what he's doing and some tips that he's providing. And also, I always like to say, hey, the SBIR program is one of the most compelling and small business friendly programs that the government has. And as a HUBZone company, if you're on the HUBZone conference here, you're looking for advantages, right? So we're looking for ways to get more of your fair share. As a small business, it's a struggle out there. The SBIR program provides over, as I mentioned to you, almost $4 billion annually now. And the SBIR, we'll talk about SBIR and STTR, it's a single program, but they are different. This slightly different in how they run, but we're not going to have time to go over all that. I will have some suggestions for training, links that you can look into further. And you're always welcome to reach out to me, and I can direct you to where some opportunities might be on the national stage for you to look into this more. But the goal is to fund. It's a economic development program. The government put this program together to try to stimulate new technology development to address the technology needs of the various agencies that participate. It's only to small business, so 500 employees or less. There are no revenue limitations to stimulate technological innovation and develop products with commercial merit. So you're looking at hardware, software. It's not just discovering new things to discover new things down the road. It's not for consulting, developing a consulting business, so to speak. You can do consulting work part of this, but developing tools and technology. Over 5,000 awards made annually, 11 federal agencies, vetting high risk, high payoff research that can be commercialized in the private sector or in the sense from more of a DoD side of thing, transition to the funding agency. Again, there's 11 agencies that all participate in this program, and they're all doing it to meet their specific agency mission. 11 agencies, 11 different missions, and they've been using this program over 40 years now, and developing it to meet their specific processes and procedures and goals. It's gated funding, meaning they're being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars that go into this program. They're going to be providing a small amount of money over a relatively small amount of time for you to validate an idea works. And then you have to prove out in a second proposal, the larger money, if you prove the first phase is feasible, that your idea has merit, then you can then apply for the second phase and get the larger amount of money for a larger amount of time. So that's a good thing for us taxpayers that this is paying for. So again, one of the better programs out there that really provides validation for ideas before it funds it. Commercialization focus. As I mentioned to you, the agencies have various opportunities throughout the year, but there's always going to be something out there. And over almost 25% of all seed capital, when we talk about seed funding, more the venture capital sense, is provided in this program. Now, it's a little bit different for contracting agencies, but we'll talk about that. Critical capital, earliest funding. Basically, it's the comeback when you're talking to an agency and you're like, well, you don't really have it built yet. Come back when you have something built. You're talking about a bank or a venture capitalist. Come back when you've got a prototype. Come back when you've got customers. You're like, well, I'm so early, I don't have that yet. That's what this program is for, to cover those earliest risks of building a technology. The challenge of it, of course, is that you're dealing with technologists building technology. At the same time, they want you to have the business side figured out, even though this is an early stage program. So SBIR is funding the earliest stages of feasibility first. So if you've got a product that's working and you're just trying to sell it now, needs capital to hire salespeople, that is not SBIR. So this is for research and development. And again, I'm going to be over this in a couple seconds here. 500 employees or less, owned and operated in the US, and all the work must be performed in the United States. So again, it's an economic development program for the United States. Going through, these are the 3 phases. The 2 phases are funded through that almost $4 billion annually. The 3rd phase is other government money, getting product sales. It's the tracking mechanism. As the government is, you might imagine, they want to track their programs and success, and the more you get phase 3s, the more successful their program is. So look at the timelines here, between $50K to $250,000, depending on the programs and agencies. 6 months to a year, typically, the phase 1, and then phase 2 is up to typically 2 years, and anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million. Again, depending on the agency and the program that you might be applying to within that agency. So you're not looking at a short 2-month project, or you're not looking at a 10-year project, but you're looking at a good 2 to 3 to 4 year project, depending on the agency and how you develop the tools. These are the agencies, and get a sense for the big ones. DOD has over almost $2 billion of the money in there. Health and Human Services, or National Institutes of Health, is second, over $1 billion. Energy and NASA come in there 3rd and 4th, and then the National Science Foundation has over $200 million. And the other agencies are the more smaller agencies that typically are going to have 1 cycle per year. The agencies up top are going to have at least usually 2, and some of them actually have 3 or 4 cycles. So there's always something coming and going. And the key is to find out where your technology might be a fit in multiple agencies to give you the most opportunity, right? So you can kind of see this. Some very successful companies, Symantec and Qualcomm, we all know those guys. Probably to log in through one of those. You're using one in your system probably right now, right? Sonicare, the toothbrush, some of the 23andMe, we all, the genetic testing thing. So these are some great, these companies alone have paid back the billions and billions in taxes that the government's put into these programs over the years. So very successful program. These are all going to be made available to everybody through the HUBZone conference folks. So I'm not going to go into all these details, but the difference of contracting agencies and granting agencies is pretty evident. Maybe think about, granting agencies typically aren't buying the results of this research. Contracting agencies do. So that's the basic 2 differences. Now, when you're trying to sell things they all buy pencils and computers and computer services. So certainly that's not what we're talking about here, but we're talking more about the research that the SBIR program is funding. Don't lose equity. You maintain all the intellectual property, which I think for companies that are looking for advantages, if you're just a butt in a seat doing some work, when you're done, the contract's over and you own nothing. The SBIR program actually allows you to own the technology that you've developed for the government. It's providing you credibility from the government, the evaluation, and something of interest, sole source contract ability. Anything deriving from, concluding from, extending from the work performed in the SBIR, even in the phase 1 early stage level, can be developed and get further sole source contracts from any federal agency, post office. They don't have that. They don't have these programs. Any agency. Follow on and without competition. So that's a kind of an advantage there you might want to look into, buy it just for it, because it's a great advantage. And again, I know we're all looking for advantages. Some last considerations here. If you're working with a customer, learning about their needs, and you should always be thinking about where maybe some gaps are in what their technology is. And you can propose topics this way. They like to work with people they know, like, love, and trust, as I always say. And if you're doing great servicing a contract with them now, and you think you can build a better tool for something, propose topics. They have to post that topic for other people to compete, of course, but this would be a great way to get more business. Got to be prepared, and this is sort of talks about some of the things we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. Growth. Anytime you're getting those first contracts or proposing things to the government for the first time, you got to be prepared, because once you win it, I always say the hard part's over, the hard part starts. You got to be starting to get ready for getting audited, and project management skills, growing financially, timekeeping, tracking, all this stuff, cybersecurity requirements. It's all this stuff requires the company to sign off on and be prepared for, or you're not going to be successful in SBIR, or really, quite frankly, any other federal contracting. So that's why we're talking about this a little bit today. And SBIR does cover the cost of some of those services. There are indirect rates, overhead rates, and you get up to a 7% fee to pay for other stuff that you need in the company. Rent, benefits, accounting systems, payroll systems. These are all part of the systems that are going to make you look more compelling for the government to want to do business with you. I always say they're looking for ways not to do business with you sometimes, and you want to show them you're prepared. You want them to look at your proposal instead of your company, back office systems, right? A couple of areas to look at tutorials. This is the SBIR.gov website, and from there you can click on tutorials. SBIR.gov is easy. /tutorials, and you can find tutorials and links and all kinds of great stuff there. There are states like Virginia that we have a federal grant to actually develop more training tools and classes. You might want to look to see if your state, if you're not in Virginia, find out who in your state. There's a link at the SBIR.gov site to find a list of state support services for you. My services, we have training, we have upcoming live training. We have recently had a DoD session. This is like a 3-hour-long session. We have a NSF and NIH session. These are 4-hour-plus sessions. We have an archive section here. You can look at those. Anybody can sign up for those. They're free for Virginia-based companies and a small fee for others, but well worth it. I think that would be something to consider if you're looking for advantages in government contracting. The SBIR program is sort of a proxy for what we're going to talk about today: early stage government contracting and the challenges that SBIR companies and other earlier stage government contractors face. So with that, just some housekeeping. If you've got questions, we're monitoring the questions that come through, and send them in whenever you get the question. We might answer it, and hopefully we don't have to answer it if we know we've already answered it. Usually what happens is someone asks a question, it's usually on the next slide, right? We've all been there. So keep that in mind. We'll try to answer. We've got three sessions or 3 panels today, all mostly the same people. So we'll try to answer those questions at the end of each session, so this provide more relevance. And if not, we've got some time at the end that we can cover any questions that might not have been answered or that you might have from the final session. So with that, we're going to talk about the back office systems. Like, where are you? What are some of the things that are out there? What are the challenges that are facing small businesses? The AtWork Systems solution, we're going to talk to Ron, who's the founder and CEO, and we'll ask him, talk about why he came up with this. What was he seeing out there, and why did he found this company to develop these key tools? Shirley Bailey is the founder and CEO of MSC Management Services, LLC, and she's helping companies find these solutions and work with them to implement these solutions. And Mark Evans is the president of Bubo Learning Design, and he's using these systems, and he's got the same challenges a lot of other companies have, and he's going to talk about his experiences and the thought processes and really where he is. He's pretty early still, so you're going to provide some learning on the go. He might be learning right now. Anyhow,
Always learning.
We're always learning. With that, again, if there's any questions, plug away. We'll cover those, and we're going to try to keep on time here. We're going to be going till what would we say, 3 o'clock today, right? Or 2:30, right?
Yeah. To be
2:30.
perfectly honest, you guys aren't really on a time crunch.
Right.
So if we have a conversation going and we have a dialogue, unless you guys got to go, feel free. Let's have at it.
Right. So Vic, Ron, why don't you go ahead and talk about some of your the thoughts you had in the challenges and where AtWork came from, and kind of this back office system conundrum that a lot of small businesses might have.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Robert, for the intro. I have been working with small businesses probably for the better part of a couple of decades. I was with a large prime contractor, and in the role that I was in, I had to work with a lot of small businesses. And one of the things that I recognized is a lot of them didn't have sort of the adequate infrastructure to be able to work with us as the prime and then meet a lot of the requirements that we were putting on them. Sometimes when you look at it, it's kind of hard to be a government contractor, especially when you're small. because you have, special accounting requirements that you have to meet. You have requirements in terms of security that you have to meet. And so what I found in working with small businesses is they would typically have sort of a patchwork of solutions to be able to, address, some of those. And sometimes putting that patchwork of solutions together in the long run was probably more costly than having sort of an integrated, efficient approach. And so what I wanted to do with the One Lake system is really build out a platform that was integrated, that would allow them to be able to address both the things they needed to deliver today, but also the things that they needed to be able to scale and grow their business. But what was really important to me is be able to deliver this platform in a way that it could be, affordable to a small business. And I think that's really what we strive for every day in terms of delivering, our solution and how we've tried to solve, this problem.
Shirley, where do you fit into this, into the AtWork system?
Well, I've been working with Ron for a couple of years, and coming from a government contracting background, a government contract auditor, I too was working with a lot of small businesses and understood the challenges that they were having, understanding how most business owners are not accountants. They don't understand government contracting. They don't understand indirect rates. So trying to work with Ron to develop a system as he was going forward to try to present to these business owners and others that didn't have accounting background, how cost effectively and a streamlined type of process could work to help them and to help them understand as they grew, and to be able to understand how, the audit requirements and those types of items that were behind that. So working with using my background in government contract accounting to help the small businesses understand how a system like this is crucial for them as they grow as well.
Right. I know a few years ago, I was working with a small business who was applying for their phase 2 SBIR. And there may have been some other things going on. I think there was a hiring freeze. There were some stimulus packages going on. This is maybe about 10 years ago, and companies were not being given their phase 2s because they hadn't proved that they had a timekeeping system, an approved cost accounting system in place that they've been using. Not that, oh, now I've got one, give me the money. They said, well, have you been using it? And, well, use it in 3 months, come back again. And it was sort of like, oh, really? So again, that's always been in my mind for the last decade of like, wow, you really gotta, and the dynamics in the government change, like the perceptions of government contracting officers, ebbs and flows, and all of a sudden they had billions of more dollars to manage, and guess what they weren't doing? They weren't hiring more contracting officers at the government level. These contracting officers were slammed. So again, these are ways to try to, all these things are ways to make it easier for them to let them give you the money or award you. And it's not a reason not to. So, so Mark, you're using this stuff now, right? So, or you're engaging with it, and you're
Yes.
starting. And so, tell us about some of the sort of the thought processes you had in
Sure. I think
both your SBIR side of things as well as your general business.
yeah, Ron did a good job of describing us as the typical example. We were founded in 2015, so relatively young, still learning our way, and had been growing through private sector growth and targeted the public sector because we realized we were located and living in a hub zone. And so we went that route and put together all the different systems that we had at our disposal. So we had Clockify for tracking hours, using Insperity for our payroll, using QuickBooks for just basic accounting, just the bare minimum, using Slack and Asana for project management, just having to make those software decisions one by one as we incurred an issue that needed a software solution, right? So we were very much patchwork of many different tools. And so that was one operational issue. At the same time, we discovered the SBIR market and applied for one with the Air Force, and were lucky enough to be awarded a phase 1 through AtWorks, which really got the ball rolling for us needing more clarity on our accounting system, specifically because of the fringe rates and the different level of detail that the government requires. So that really became a catalyst for me to say, okay, enough is enough of this patchwork. How can we consolidate and have a solution and a plan in place so that we can scale? Because doing it that way isn't something that I would advise anybody to try to scale with, because all of those software packages come with their own subscription fees and user licenses and updates, and it does become quite cumbersome, even if you're not adding all the costs together at once. When you do look at the holistic number, it's pretty expensive to approach your operations with a patchwork of software solutions. So that's what, when Victor Roeder reached out and we started the conversations with OneLink, and we were in the middle of our phase 2 application, and it became very clear to me how helpful this would be for that effort and all future efforts. Because as you outlined, Ron, the SBIR program is certainly an attractive place for businesses to try to hang their hats and get a little bit of traction with new ideas or innovations. And that's certainly something that we intend to continue to do, and we need to do it better. So our phase 2 was selectable but not funded. So we're back to the drawing board. We're about to apply for one with the USDA. They released their RFA about 2 weeks ago, and we're back at it for another SBIR. The Air Force one, we were lucky enough to turn into a phase 3, which is just non-SBIR funding, as you outlined. But the relationships we got from the SBIR phase 1 were really key to that. And I'm sitting at Dyess Air Force Base today as we're finishing up that work. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think the
Robert, can I add a few things to
certainly.
that? You know, so I think we met Mark, kind of, in his early, stages as a company, and especially as a government contractor. And in addition to, kind of the solutions and being able to build sort of an efficient, back office. The other thing that I think companies kind of at his stage need to, be aware of is long-term, if they really are going to be successful as a government contractor, there's just some things that they have to do on their corporate resume around understanding what the rules are for accounting, and understanding things that like the indirect rates, and understanding what the government is looking for in terms of when they start to do the audit and they want to know, okay, how have you spent this money? How have you been, can you tell us exactly what, you've spent it on, and provide that kind of accountability? And so from my perspective, it isn't a matter of just getting to a better place cost and getting to, having a more efficient system, although that is a key driver. There is also, how do I understand how to really be a government contractor? And an important part of that is understanding enough about the accounting so that when you're proposing, on your level 2, it's making sense of what you're proposing. And certainly when you're bidding on, jobs outside of the SBIR program, that becomes an important factor as well. Yeah.
I think I'll echo that. Our intent is to scale, right? We want to grow, make small, big. And so like we're putting together a contract now for the Bureau of Land Management, which, because of the kind of the hard lessons that we had to learn going from minimally using QuickBooks to having a very robust accounting system with codes and rates to the level of detail the government expects, we're far more prepared to put that proposal together for the contract. And it's outside of the SBIR world. So it's already giving us, I think, the benefit of trying to act like a true government contractor for the opportunity that's right in front of us right now.
Shirley, do you have any other comments on the overall need for these sorts of, your experiences? And then Ron, we can go back to you before we go to the next panel. May I ask you a little bit more about, the modularity. These are modules, the cost effectiveness. I mean, we all know Deltek, these giant, bigger systems that are out there that the average small company that's, where is this making sense for the sweet spot for companies to look into these sort of solutions? Because I know
Robert, I love to talk about the product, so
yeah.
I will. I'll let
I'll
let Shirley weigh in first, and then.
And I know we're going to talk in the second panel about some of the training classes, which sort of relate to some of the modules, I think, right? And so maybe that'll be a good transition. You let me know.
I agree. I think with what Mark and Ron both said, it's the understanding of behind where your company really is at. What's behind the cost? How will a proposal impact your cost? How will it impact your rates? And understanding that as being a government contract auditor, it was very obvious when you would go into a company that understood what their indirect rates were or what made up their indirect rates, and those who didn't. And it also is critical when you're doing a proposal of being able to understand, when I win this proposal, the worst thing to do is to say, great, I won this proposal. And then the bad thing is I won this proposal. So it's, it's that type of scenario of understanding, going in with your eyes wide open about what you're about to enter into, and to know that when you put those rates in, it's something that you can live with going forward. So
I think to piggyback a little bit on that, as far as just a business development tool for me personally, having confidence is incredibly important. Instead of being the desperate company just would sign a shoe to get a contract, and that shows, and not having all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, because you do have to know your fringe rates. You really do. Having confidence in those numbers lowers the desperation, I think, that I had in trying to just win anything I could get, and lifted the confidence level to the point where I think we just presented ourselves better overall, and it's subtle, but made ourselves more attractive to potential clients.
Yeah, and as I always say, the rates are what they are. And they change.
They change
as your business grows, and you get a contract, and you hire employees, and you get more money you're expending on, on this contract, and you got more fringe benefits you're providing, and your rates do change. Some of the government agencies at the earliest stages, I know the NIH, for example, gives you, a flat indirect rate unless you want to get one negotiated, and that's a whole process of negotiating rates, right? And I know Ron's kind of like, yeah, that's in this process.
I had an
help you understand the rates.
Robert, I had an interesting experience probably about 2 months ago. I talked to a lot of small businesses, and just by the nature of what we do, we kind of get to know, a little bit more about their business. And so it was a company that they were providing some research, in development, and it was interesting, stuff. But the way they had to attract the engineers and attract the talent that they did, they had put together a very non-government kind of benefit package. And so when we started to look at, the benefit package they had, and they didn't really understand the relationship between that and what it was going to do to their rates. And then I kind of helped them understand, what the relationship is between the two. I think they realized that it was going to be very difficult for them to be a government contractor and offer those kinds of benefits, and be able to win work. And I think they were well intended. They had good engineers and good research, but it just wasn't sized for the market that they wanted to be in. And so I think sometimes when you start to, you start to work with people, you start to give them the tools and you start to give them the real data. I mean, it became obvious to them very quickly that they needed to do something different, especially with their fringe package, right?
Hey guys, before you move on, I want to say a little thing because these guys aren't as great about bragging about themselves, so I'm going to do it. The correlation of this panel might seem a little bit unique, but everybody on this panel is actually, members or strategic partners of the HUBZone Council. And Shirley is the board chair, and she was actually roped into this whole discussion with AtWorks a while back because AtWorks contacted me, who I should never touch any accounting system. Like, they're like, hands off, Michelle, no, no, no. And they said, hey, we want to explain this to you. We think that this can help HUBZone companies. We really want to figure out how we can, develop new tools and streamline it because, the compliance process for HUBZone, it's very cumbersome. We have to verify 35%. And I said, I am the wrong one. So I said, well, why don't you talk to our board chair, Shirley, because she is an accounting background. She's working in GovCon for years. And not only did she have a discussion with them, she adopted the system internally. So that speaks volumes to it because I can assure you, somebody that knows her very, very well, she is not going to utilize the system if she herself doesn't believe in it. And, I just wanted to make sure that that was articulated in this conversation, is that these are fellow small businesses that do understand your obstacles, but they also are practicing what they preach. And they realize that there's hiccups. And throughout this entire time, I could hear Shirley, hey, Ron, Victor, maybe it should do this. And so rather than defending why their solution did that, they adjusted in order to meet their clients' needs. So, and obviously, and Mark here, I mean, whoever watched the pitch video already knows he's the bomb diggity. So, they're coming up with amazing solutions, and Robert Brooks, obviously is providing amazing tools and resources for the SBIR program. And I'm still going to make sure that he comes back on and has a more discussion. But I just wanted to make that point because I don't feel like it was really coming through when it was explaining why these type of solutions and why you need them, but also, resonating who this panel truly is. So I'll be quiet now. Sorry, guys.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Michelle.
Michelle, you can compliment me all the time if you want to come back on.
And, again, the reason I like these panels that have a small business, multiple small businesses on here, is because it shows, it's other people that are going through your, it's like you're listening to a presentation and and you learn more about the questions people ask the panelists, right? So because we always, but these are the small businesses that are kind of like everybody that's looking at this presentation now, is that they're going through some of the similar things, but they're creating tools. It's not like Deltec has not been a small business for, I don't know, probably 2 decades, right? So there's not a recent understanding, or they themselves are not the small business anymore. And these guys are, this is why this is a nice panel, because everybody's we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, and we all have the same issues and are now I'm with a nonprofit, so a little different. And I have an entire accounting team on the other floor, so thank goodness. But we have these rates, and whenever I do something else, they're different rates, and it challenges the people that are managing contracts to the end. They're like, well, we have, our rates went down, or so now we have more money to spend, or the rates went up. We have to kind of figure out how to tighten this project scope a little bit before the project's over. And it's like, oh, it's changed. So it's dynamic, it's continuing, and making sure that you're, so that's why I like this panel, because it's really relevant. The people on here are relevant currently. So that said, are there any other last comments anybody want to make before we move to the second panel?
Well, yeah, I have a,
Sure.
I have to give a shout out to Shirley as well, because, we have been involved in, working to build the tool, and she's had a real significant role, I think, in what it is today. I remember, I don't know, a while back, we were having a conversation about pricing. And, I sort of had this elaborate scheme, about how I was going to price it. And she goes, no, it's got to be simple. It's got to be affordable for a small business. And it's got to be predictable in terms of what their cost is going to be. And so either knowingly or unknowingly, I think she doesn't realize how much that conversation that she had with me influenced how we ultimately came up with a very, very flexible and affordable pricing strategy for the product, right? Yeah.
Hey guys, I have a really big news for you. The NDAA has passed, the sole sourcing threshold has officially increased, and price evaluation preference is going to be applied at the task order. So, woo woo. Sorry, I'll send out a blast, but thought I'd tell you guys before I do.
Breaking news.
Good.
Yeah. It doesn't look as good when I wave my hands with the background. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. No, that's great.
So moving on to our next panel, and I have to apologize to my fellow panelists. The presentation I'm on doesn't have the notes. The new presentation, Victor, you sent me, I don't have the notes at the bottom. So I'm kind of winging a lot of this, but one of the things that that AtWorks is putting together is some training sessions, and they're related to the issues that their core product is trying to address, obviously. And so this training is a 6-part web series, very, very affordable. It's like what, $50 a pop or something for this multiple hour training session. And they're going to go over this a little bit. But again, this is the second panel is talking about really ways to make your business more competitive. Ways to make you look more valid. As a small startup company, or you've been in business for 5 or 8 years, the traction, some being in business for 8 years, and we have 3 employees. You've been 8 years and only 3 employees. Okay, well, you have to tell the stories, right? And how you're building, and you want to be someone they want to work with. So Victor is the product manager at AtWork, and he's going to talk about the series. And Mark has been going through some of this training as well. And again, providing a little bit more relevance to the specific modules and the specific training classes that are out there. And these are, ad hoc. You can take one, not, you don't have to take the whole series. But I think it provides some relevance and as to, again, some of the specific domain area challenges that the product is trying to address, but also that you might, as a small business, have run into and realize, oh yeah, that's something we want to look into. So Victor, why don't you talk about the class, and Mark is going to kind of chime in there as well as to really where what these challenges have been, and maybe a little bit more detail about each of these sessions.
All right, thanks, Robert. First, I want to thank everybody for coming here on 1:45 on a Friday, and a nice summer day, by the way, which is rare out here.
It is nice.
So I want to talk about 3 things today. First, why we created the webinar series and what we wanted our attendees to achieve. Secondly, who should plan to attend and what roles or responsibilities we found could benefit. And the last thing I want to touch on is what was unique about our delivery approach and format. We're talking about accounting, compliance, and project management, and we know those aren't exactly exciting topics. But we want to find a way to make it informative, engaging, and interactive. So you guys helped tee things up for me, because the previous panel discussion was on the fact that we know that a key challenge is having people lower their costs to be competitive in this LPTA environment. And we found, so Ron and Shirley talked about the fact that most contractors are challenged with knowing their costs. When I say knowing their costs, it means knowing their direct and indirect costs, because you need to know both of them to create your fully burdened costs, which helps you determine if you're really making money, losing money, or even breaking even on your projects. So lowering your costs, as they said, is key to improving your win rates, maximizing your profits, and helping you grow your business. So we talked about the fact that Ron and Shirley talked about that people need to know what it means to be a government compliant contractor. And so what helped Mark when he talked about his experiences was he actually took this course. And so some of the things about creating and understanding how to calculate your indirect rates, we covered things like what are the levers you need a hand to manage and lower the rates to your advantage, and also how your accounting systems and your project management systems are helpful in helping you make sure that you're compliant and you're running your business efficiently. So those were the common themes we had throughout each of the 6 sessions. Now we can go to the next slide. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead.
Is this the slide you want here with the
Yes,
6?
this is it.
It's there.
All right.
So I'm just going to go briefly to kind of cover the range of topics we covered. In the first webinar, we talked about the different types of solicitations, and we covered some of the things that were included in each of the sections and how you tear it apart, how you dissect it and determine, is this an opportunity that's right for you, and should you in fact look at bidding? So we end up with key takeaways for each seminar. And in this one, we end up with a bid, no bid checklist. So again, I'm just kind of highlighting, but the goal is to know whether you should be in the game or not. In the second webinar, we looked at the different types of contracts and the risks associated with each. So we all know a lot of people like going into the firm fix because they think it's easy, and then going next to the time and material, and we know cost reimbursable is a challenge. So what we want to do is to make sure we looked at each of the contract types, and then what are the risks for you, and we created a contract type risk matrix. So each contract type has benefits to the person responding and the people who requested the solicitation. So all that's gone over in that webinar session. The webinars 3 and 4 are really about planning your work and executing your work and what you need to do in the systems that are required to make that happen. So we start off with webinar 3 with looking at how you build your work plan, how you create the tasks, and how you do staffing, and the things you need to do in terms of calculating your indirect rates, and make sure when you're bidding the prices, you understand that you're bidding it and you can make money and profit when you with your bids. And then how you track that, and we have some takeaways there. In webinar 4, it's about execution, looking at your plan versus actual costs, taking your plan and then comparing it, looking in real time is whether or not you're meeting your objectives, whether you're going or you're exceeding or staying on plan. And the kind of things you need to do to, the metrics you need to manage and stay on track. So we use best practices there. And in webinar 5, we go into the differences between direct, indirect, and unallowable cost. And the main thing we do is we use this as an opportunity to align your operations with the SF 1408 requirements. So the goal is to make sure that we see how your business maintains and supports a compliant operating business. And so again, the takeaway there is showing your operations and how they align with the compliance requirements. And webinar 6 is just making sure that you realize that each company and at certain times, each company has their own requirements. You need to see how you align your accounting system, the different rates you have, and how this is aligned with your specific needs. And as Robert talked about earlier, sometimes those needs change as well as you grow. And so making sure it's not just a one and done, and also you just don't copy and paste someone else's accounting system, how this is aligned specifically to take advantage of your individual needs.
Yeah, I
Let's
think
go. Go ahead.
I'll add just something here. I think Bubo is a learning and design company, and I want to compliment AtWorks on the type of analysis that went into the curriculum design here. So nice job, guys. I was lucky enough to have Ron as my facilitator through most of this content. And the thing that I think was most valuable is, and Ron already kind of alluded to it earlier, is do you want to be a successful government contractor? If that answer is yes, then these learning objectives are for you. These are the basic building blocks for that kind of entrepreneur. I wasn't, when I started Bubo, that wasn't necessarily my first goal to have. It is now. And I think we're going to be successful there. We've started to be, but these lessons weren't things that I understood fully. And having gone through it now, it's directly applicable to that consolidation effort to what we tried to do with our operations and getting one system in place. But it's also very, very applicable in just how you approach your day-to-day decision making. The first one right off the bat, the webinar of bid or no bid. I mean, that's one of the most basic calls. Whereas instead of the scatter shooting, go for anything that moves kind of approach that I employed earlier, it's such a time saver. So there's lots of nuggets in this that I think go a little bit deeper than most training that you get. I've been through a lot of the 7J training. If you other HUBZone owners, that's available to us. There's a great group out of Alabama, the Catalyst Center. If you guys have worked with them, excellent content. I think this is on par with the best I've seen. So because I am a lifelong learner and we all have more to learn, this eliminates a lot of blind spots as you work through. And it is hard work. It's not easy to go from not knowing the answers to this stuff to having a very good answer. Takes effort. And so I don't want to imply that any of this is easy. It's not, but it's that hard work that's incredibly necessary. And this gives you more of a roadmap.
Thanks, Mark. And that leads to another point I want to make, which is who should attend. And what we find is that it includes business owners like you. It includes people who are in operations. We had some BD and salespeople involved. And of course, people in finance and accounting. So most people think of these topics as only something that someone who's dealing with the finance side. But what you saw was that it was helpful in helping you prepare for your implementation. And also it helped you afterwards to know how to run your operations. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the fact that it was you and also you had another person join from your team.
Yeah, Sonia was a part of it. So I had the person who's helping me do all the grunt work and getting our numbers kind of solidified was important to be a part of it. So Ron and his team have been very supportive of our questions and answers. And again, the thing that I thought that was very beneficial for me is it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to get, frankly, a little bit terrified by all this because there is so much. If you've not done it before, it can be daunting. And I can see why the small business pool is shrinking because people are making irrational decisions saying, heck with that, it's too much. I got enough to worry about. I was tempted to make that decision because it is a lot. So I brought Sonia in. She was part of the training. She's helped a lot, but just overall, just having that knowledge has been incredibly powerful and calming down and feeling like I got this. I can gravitate back to some of the material here and feel like, okay, yeah, this is not, it's an elephant, but I can still take it one bite at a time. I want to finish this meal. So hopefully that answers your question, Victor. I'm not sure.
Yeah, let's talk about those bites. What we did, we decided to take 90-minute bites. We know that a lot of people like you are time constrained and you don't have, the ability to just take a week off and learn this. So what we did was we made it so that it's one 90-minute section at a time, and we had over 6 sessions. So some weeks we had 1, and some other weeks we had 2 sessions that week. And we thought what it did was it gave you a chance to still come in and learn at a good pace, but still get it done at a good pace too. It's not taking you forever to learn it. And so another thing, so what did you think about the length of the classes?
It was good. There's interactivity, a high level of engagement. It was COVID training, so it was all Zoom, as we mentioned, how much we love Zoom, but it was well constructed. So it had a flow to it. The learning objectives were met, and the facilitator, Ron, used some tools to keep it engaging. So there was some gamified elements that you could score questions to and try to beat. I never could beat Victor when he was on the calls. He always won because he knows this stuff very well.
Well, that's another part. You're laughing. You went to a class on compliance, on accounting, and in project management. And you had fun. So the goal was we use this platform called Kahoot. And what it did was it's engaging, it's interactive, it has a gaming approach to it. and it was challenging. You end up going in and learning. We had kind of ask the question and the answers help you understand the concepts. And we also left with key takeaway summaries. Those things allow you to leave each session and go back to your office and have something tangible and valuable, even regardless of what system you had in place, whether you're using spreadsheets or our system. These are great takeaways to help you run your business better. So what do you think about those components?
Yeah, they worked as they were designed to do. You guys executed it well. In fact, Sonia and I would kind of kid each other on the side through the Slack channel about who was going to beat who when we were on the calls together. So it kept her engaged as well.
Well, I appreciate the feedback, and I think we kind of met our objectives for this session. The goal is to make sure that all the things that Ron and Shirley and others talked about, you need to know how to run your business. You need to know what these concepts are. And this is a good, very concrete way to get you that information in one set of 6 modules that you could take either as an individual, but more importantly, we think you should take it as a team. Bring your team in and learn it, and then go back to your office and make it happen.
Yeah, it's a 1-2 punch. It's like you're trying to get the operations side started with one link, so you're actually executing things within the system, and at the same time getting clarity on those blind spots about, why am I doing this and what value? Oh, okay, this is how I'm going to use it. Here's the value to me, how it's going to make us better. So it's a nice combination.
Victor, how often are you guys running this series, the full 6-part series? When you say we had a session twice was that 2 full 6-part series twice in a week?
First of all, I want to let people know that if you go back, if you see at the bottom, there's our link is to our, if you go to our website and go to our webinars,
right,
you'll see that you can see exactly the fact that we have six modules starting in October. And it's a good time to get in. And again, we recommend you can take one or all. We recommend taking all if you can. And like I say, bring a team. And it's generally 1 or 2 sessions a week. So there are 2 weeks where it's 1 session and 2 weeks where there are 2 sessions. So it's normally a Wednesday. And then in 2 weeks, it's a Wednesday and Thursday. That allows you to get all 6 modules in. And so please take a look at the site and join in, and we're hoping to help you make a difference.
And the fee gets up to what, multiple people in just for that one small fee, right? Like $50 a section.
It's $50 a module, so $50 a class per person.
Per person?
It's $49. You actually save $1.
No. Cool. Yeah, very cost effective. I think if you look at these modules, you can figure out where the key ones for you are. Or who needs to take them on your team. But I certainly it's affordable. And I think as Mark said, these are all things, if you want to be a compliant, relevant government contractor for the long haul, these are things you're going to either learn this way or the hard way. And so learn it this way is the managed approach. And I don't know how many times I give training classes, SBIR training classes, that we do sort of off, separate, sort of different sort of side sessions on commercialization. And all the time I hear, man, I wish I had heard this thing before I did this, or before I applied for that, or before I did. And it's like, yeah, but hey, you're doing it now, right? Everybody had to pat yourself in the back whenever you can, because move forward, because you can't look back, right? So, well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. And this is a great series. I know I've been promoting it to the companies I've been working with, so hopefully they're taking advantage of the opportunity. And as a side thing, I as a state-funded entity here in Virginia, we work closely with other state organizations like the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, and they have all kinds of support. There's one in every state of PTACs. And they do government contracting support, and they do free training and free one-on-one stuff. These tools here are very put together by I think it's a neat package that you have here. You got to pay for this, but I think what you're getting out of this is a really interesting series that really all fits together and covers a lot of the things you need to cover. You may not be able to do all this in 2 weeks and all of a sudden enact it the next week, but this is a long-term approach where you can start putting the pieces together. So anyhow, look at your PTAX for other support, but I have to kind of wave their flag when I can. But this is a great tool. So with that, thank you guys. And we're gonna, I guess, move to our last panel session here. And we got about 30 minutes before the end of the official hour and a half. So Ron, we've got plenty of time to probably address this. But this is something that I know you've got a lot of background on, Ron, and you know the relevance of this. And this is something with regards to the CMMC certification requirements that have been sort of emerging over the last several years and kind of putting a lot of small companies in binds, asking questions, getting tired of hearing about it, the goalposts getting moved again down the road. But this is something that's coming to fruition very soon. And I know you guys, as far as the CMMC certification requirements and the cybersecurity compliance, all these things that are a challenge, and particularly for small companies that don't have a lot of money to pay for a lot of these services. Talk about what this solution is doing, where what you're trying to develop here, and maybe some of the key questions companies have to ask themselves on where they are and where this could be a fit for them.
Okay. Well, I think this topic is an interesting one, and in terms of just a little bit of a confession to make. I not only have a software company that's actually building the OneLink product, but I also, with a partner, have a small cybersecurity company as well. And my partner is actually the cybersecurity architect for the National Nuclear Security Agency. So we have some background in this cyber area as well. When I started to really hear about the requirements that the government was going to impose on small businesses around, each of them having some capability and being able to meet, this requirement, my sort of immediate reaction was, wow, it's needed. I understand the risk. It's needed because the government is spending an awful lot of money, and they just don't want some foreign country or some bad actors outside of in this country to be able to go and exploit all of that. And so I really understood the need for it. I think the thing that I was a little bit perplexed by is, how was the government actually going to get a small business to understand security requirements and then get them to be able to, do it in a way that they could create a manageable budget to be able to, to execute on it, and then be able to do it in a time frame where they had to do that and do all the other things that they have to do to be compliant as a government contractor. And so what I've tried to do is to say, hey, is there a way that we could provide some solution that would make this a lot more transparent to small businesses in terms of what they have to do? Could we give them a technical assist? Meaning, could we create some templates, or could we create, some solutions that would then, help them be able to address this requirement? Could we give them the ability to make it a little bit more understandable in terms of what they had to do and how much it was going to cost them to do it? And so what we did is took kind of a step back. A group of us kind of got together over a breakfast one morning and started to whiteboard and brainstorm. And so we came up with some tooling. And that's really what I want to talk about in this session. And so, in doing that, Robert, I have to give a shout out again to CIT, because once we were done and kind of had a kind of a well-formed kind of idea of what that tooling was like, we actually put a grant request together and submitted it to CIT to get some funding, and we were lucky enough to get CIT to help support us in building this tool. Robert, if we could just go to the next slide, I'm going to just talk a little bit about what it is and kind of our view. And this came from sort of a whiteboard session that myself and some security people kind of had. If you look at the problem around achieving CMMC, a certain level of CMMC compliance, the way we sort of describe this is there are a set of security controls that you have to be able to demonstrate to the government that you are meeting. And in meeting those controls, there is a set of policies that you need. Some of the controls are related around policies and what are you doing around that. And then some of the controls are related around just technically, how have you built your infrastructure? And have you built your infrastructure in such a way that you can meet some of the things that the government is asking for? And so we took an early look at the controls when we were building OneLink. And we said, let's be very mindful while we're building OneLink to make sure that we can address as many of the controls that the government is asking for as we can. So we did that. We made sure that we could address a good number of them, but that still didn't allow us to be able to say to a small business that was confronted with trying to get to a CMMC capability, kind of how are they going to do it? And so what we decided to do was take some of the tooling that we already had developed in the OneLink platform, like the workflow, the document management, and the project management capability, and really build out just a few more components that would give us a sort of an end-to-end security, capability. And so this diagram really kind of describes where we got and what we're offering. And so think about it from the standpoint of there are a set of requirements that you have to meet to be able to say that you have a CMMC capability. Those requirements are defined in a document published by the government, typically a NIST standard. There's a whole series of NIST standards around, think about it as the 800 series. They define all the controls and things that you have to do in order to be able to be compliant. And so what we wanted to do is really build a tool that would give you the ability to be able to build out a model. And that model would then be oriented towards, meeting one of the NIST, controls. And obviously CMMC is one of many. And so what we wanted to do is to be able to make sure that we could meet, that requirement. We also wanted to be able to leverage the tools that we already had in our platform to be able to store the evidence and to be able to give you policies that would kind of accelerate your ability to be able to meet compliance. So we brought those things together, and then we said, okay, how do we now leverage the workflow? And the way we approach that is you can build a security plan. You can then build an assessment, template electronically in our system. And then we use our workflow to actually integrate all of the actors who may have to help you get to a final certification. And so who are those actors? Those actors become people in your company who may have be involved in helping you do a compliance assessment. And so typically we call that, kind of doing your own self-assessment, kind of going in and looking to see, okay, how are we doing against these controls? and then being able to score yourself. And then invariably, you might have issues that you don't meet or things that you have to address. And so typically you have people who act as the remediators, and they're gonna say, hey, you know, the requirement is this, you're not quite meeting it. Here's what you need to do in changing, you know, your environment to be able to do that. And so we wanted to bring the ability to bring the remediators into this. And then obviously at the end of the day, when you're done, the requirements say that you have to have an independent certifier. And so if you think about getting all the way through the finish line, at some point in time, you've got these three roles that are going to interact with one another. And so what we do is we allow you to be able to build that assessment, then be able to identify what are the remediation actions that are required. And then from there, you're generating your poem. But rather than having sort of a static document, we already had a fairly robust project management tool in our system. And so what we wanted to do is to leverage that tool to now give you the ability to have an executable project, and then being able to tie that together through some dashboards. So that's what we've built. What it does is it really allows you to be able to see the entire end-to-end of getting from, you know, you're assessing yourself all the way through the finish line. And oh, by the way, if you are on our platform, we're going to give you an assist, because we're going to tell you that more than 85% of the controls we have implemented, and you get to inherit, you know, our ability to, you know, for those controls when you get to do the assessment. So let's move to the next chart. And I just want to show just a few screenshots in terms of what this looks like. And so one of the requirements is for you to build a security plan. And so what we've done here is given you a really, really simple, easy to use way for each of the controls to be able to determine and input how you are doing relative to implementing those, or what your plan is to implement those controls. And so we start with a plan that's easy to build. You know, this one simple UI gives us the ability to do that. Robert, go to the next slide. And then obviously what we want to be able to do is once we have the plan, we now want to be able to actually conduct an assessment. And so we have another very simple UI that allows us to be able to go in at any point in time, see how we're doing relative to, you know, implementing, you know, all the controls that are required. This getting all the way to like a level 3 certification is no easy task. And so many of you who may be in the IT space may require that. You might start to see, you know, shortly contracts that come out with that requirement. I think many of you though aren't going to probably have to go that far. You're going to probably have to do the level 1, you know, certification, which is going to be a little bit more manageable. But either way, we can give you the ability to number one, you know, if you're on our platform, to be able to meet many of the controls. So we'll get you probably 85% there. And then we're going to give you some tools to help you be able to see exactly, you know, kind of where you are in addressing the 15% that we don't meet. Let's go to the last chart. And so what I wanted to be able to show is just a screenshot of what some of our project management tools look like as well. So once you've done the assessment, we generate remediation actions. We then take those remediation actions and turn them into a real project plan that then allow you to be able to track and manage, you know, how well you're doing in terms of, you know, getting yourself to the finish line. And meanwhile, we're organizing all the documents and all the evidence that is required. So at the end of the day, when you are ready, when you bring the certifier in, you've got everything nice and organized and ready for them to go. So I know we kind of sort of covered a lot, Robert, in terms of what this is and how it works. But I think the bottom line is it's going to significantly reduce the time. It's going to significantly reduce the costs, and it's going to make it a lot more visible into what you need to do to get to the finish line.
How long does it take a company to implement some of your
It depends on the starting point. If you look at can you just go back one slide? So if you look at the security controls, so something like AC, that's access control. So there are about 25 to 28 requirements just in access control, right? And so depending on where you are, you might have a good starting point in terms of implementing them, and you don't have much work to do. But there could be a case where you don't have very many of them implemented, and so there's a lot of work to be done. Things like physical security, you could already have many of the practices implemented in those areas, and so you don't have much work to do. But again, that it's hard to give you a one answer to that, because it really depends on the starting point that the company is at. Now, Robert, there's a really neat thing in the requirements, and that is that if a company has a service provider and the service provider meets the control, the company can inherit that from the service provider. And so what I want to do with the OneLink platform is try to meet as many of the controls as I can, so that there's less work to be done by the company. And then so when we go through and we kind of look at, well, how do we stack up relative to the, let's say, a level 3 certification where there's 130 controls, we meet 92% of the controls. And so there is work for you to do, but it's a lot less than if you had to meet 130 by yourself.
What's the status of these? When I know they kind of kick things back a little bit, but where does it stand now in like the immediacy of people? If you haven't started looking at this yet, where have they announced a new approximate target deadline for this stuff?
So I know that they had said, that it was going to be in the June timeframe of this year, like second, third quarter of this year. I don't think we've seen any procurements come out or any hard requirements come out where they're gonna make that timeline. There's been some talk recently about pushing this into the third or fourth quarter of 2022. But here's my take on this. Just like there's some basics that you have to do to be a government contractor around, accounting and indirect rates. If you are the company, if you are the small business that is associated with a security breach, meaning the government gave you some data and that data got into the wrong people's hands, you're done as a government contractor. You might as well go find another line of work. And so there is going to be just some basic hygiene that you have to do in order to really be a responsible government contractor. And so let's take certification, kind of off the table. I think some of the work that you've got to do and being able to do, like, let's say, the basic hygiene stuff, the level 1 stuff, you need to get on with and just recognize that you just got to get that behind you.
Well, come sometime next year, like you said, you're going to be looking at an opportunity. It's going to say, level 1 certification required to bid on it. And if you don't have it, wow, now you have to get it, and there's probably a bigger line to step into as far as getting those certifications, to companies that will help, like you guys. I'm sure you'll get an uptick in business then, but do it sooner than later, because it's not going away. And to your point, you should be doing some of this anyhow. There's always that level. It's like there's always going to be some threat that you can't plan for. But man, if you get hit by something like a cyber attack, or someone loses data or sends it out in the wrong way because you didn't have the right controls, right? That's not a good thing.
That's not a good thing. That's going to be a hard thing to recover from.
Right, with or without this requirement that they're going to. But so keep it as these are good targets to follow, and be even better if you can, right?
Yeah.
Shirley, I see you came back online. Is there some thoughts you had on this?
Well, I was going to talk to Ron about this, and especially since so many of the HUBZone firms are small, and this is a critical area that we're going to be facing within the next few years for sure. What is your thoughts and your vision around helping the small businesses understand what's behind this, and how this tool from an individual company basis you could support? Will you be looking at a managed service for that to help them around these lines as well?
Yeah, so I think that it's really threefold, Shirley. I think number one, it's the awareness of how important this is. So I sort of see, if you look at the webinar series that we built, it's really more around understanding how to be a government contractor,
Right.
understanding rates,
Accounting and finance, yeah.
and accounting and finance. I sort of see doing kind of a similar thing around the security. It's the OSD document is 535 pages of security controls. I don't know anybody who can read that and understand it if you're not a practitioner in the
Right.
field.
Yawn fest.
And so part of it will be just to make people aware that there's a lot of detail and minutia in those documents, but you got to understand what it means to you and what it is that you need to do. So I think there's some pieces of that. There's also the whole notion of how do you build your infrastructure? How do you build kind of the back office of your company in a way that you can ultimately be compliant without going broke? Because you could spend a lot of money and a lot of time in this area. And so the thing that I want to be able to do there is really build out, kind of the platform, and be able to build out policies and standard solutions so that, we sort of can become a resource that small businesses can tap into. And then that allows them to really kind of lower their costs, because they're not off trying to reinvent the wheel every time, somebody says you got to meet this control or that control. And then the third part of this is the piece that I'm really talking about now, and that is, how do we get you through, the very beginnings of this to a place where you can claim that you are compliant, and that you can have an independent auditor come in and actually validate that you are. For me, the tooling is all about, how do we get you organized? How do we make sure that the evidence is collected in a repository? How do we make sure that there's a workflow, built around, taking you through that process so that it can be done efficiently? Because I am starting to work with small businesses in this area, and I'm seeing what some of them are doing. And quite frankly, some of them are spending way too much money and time in this area. And so I think just some consistent tooling can help. And that's really what I'm focused on. This is a little different in the sense that what I am also doing is I'm pulling together a consortium of other cybersecurity companies. So it's not just AtWork. I'm building 3 or 4, half a dozen other companies, and we're all sort of contributing to the knowledge base, and we're all contributing to the workflow so that we know we have something that's really going to be helpful to small businesses.
Ron, is it going to be required that you be on the AtWork system to deal with this module?
No, we're gonna pull this out and make this a separate module over time. No, Shirley, the way we built this, since you know our tooling, the way we built this is there is an assessment component that I talked about in that diagram, and these screens are coming from they're in that module. But what we want to ultimately do is, once you get to the remediation and you now have identified where your gaps are, we want to leverage our project tools, we want to leverage our timesheet, and we want to leverage our expense tools so that you can treat it like a real project and actually execute it.
Okay.
Ron, if someone's going through this certification module you have here, is that an ongoing recurring expense they would have to work with you monthly on this? And if so, obviously that's an allowable cost when you're bidding into a contract. These systems that are in place that the government wants to see in place, they are allowable costs, correct?
Yes. So right now, the way the regs, and this could change, but the way the regs are written, you define the system that that you're getting certified, and in most people it's going to be their back office, right, that they're taking through this certification. You get yourself organized, you do the work, and then you've got to bring in an independent certifier to kind of look at whether they agree with you in terms of the what you're claiming. You have to do that every 3 years. And so you've got to get sort of recertified. There is a threat assessment component, meaning you're looking at what for the business that you're in, what security threats that are out there, and you've got to do that every year because that's part of being, a compliant company. And so what I intend to do is to give companies, a module that they basically can do both components and do it really economically from the standpoint of just a small annual subscription fee. And then they have the ability to look year over year. Here's our repository. Here's all of our evidence. They don't have to go back up and look, through their file cabinets. It's all nice and organized for them. And then year over year, they can continue to refresh it. That's the whole idea behind the tooling, to kind of add efficiency to how they going to do this. Because you could, if you're not careful, and what I see lots of small businesses doing is spending way too much money in this area.
Yeah. Well, there's been, it's sort of the scary, numbers put out there. It's going to $20,000 for certain certifications, and I
was just talking to a business the other day that had spent 50, and they so I said, well, let me see your assessment. They were less than halfway done. So they just aren't big enough. They just weren't big enough. They weren't. It's one thing if you're doing millions and millions of dollars of revenue and you spend that kind of money, but this business was like doing 3 million.
Yeah. It's a little costly. Someone asked, a question came through, is there a checklist put together based on your experience on level 1 CMMC?
There is, and the tool actually gives you the checklist. So you pick a, say you want to do CMMC and you want to do level 1, it will only show you the controls that are relevant to level 1. And so that serves as your checklist. If you pick level 3, it'll only show you the controls that are level 3. Well, obviously the water gets deeper when you're level 3. Level 1, there's probably 5 or 6 main controls that you have to meet.
Well, are there any closing comments? If there's any other questions, you can send them in and we'll try to relay them as quickly as we can. Currently, there's no other questions that have come in the board. There's one that came in. Did I understand it correctly that you are looking to partner with other businesses that are CMMC certified to provide a resource to small businesses?
I sure am. So go to the website, get a hold of us, contact Victor, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. Because what I want to be able to do is provide the tooling to kind of facilitate, being able to do this and keep it organized. But as you start to do the assessments and you look at what the remediation actions are, there is a ton of work for other cyber companies to help small businesses do that efficiently. My only claim is, if you're going to work with me, you're going to have to be efficient. We don't want to rip small businesses off. And I just see some bad practices out there right now in the market, in terms of small businesses paying a whole lot more than they should be paying to get through this process.
Well, it's also that you get to become a deer caught in headlights when you get to see these what people are paying. You're like, there's almost inaction at that point, because I can't do it. Let's just wait. And then you become that person at the end when you can't wait and you have to do something. And
you can get through this. And I just say to everybody out there, you ought to think about this. Forget certification. I mean, just set that aside for now. Just kind of look at what it is that you really need to be doing security-wise to be a responsible government contractor, because it's not something you can ignore. And my thinking is, when you start to do that, then you're going to probably look at level 1 and say, yeah, I ought to be headed down that path anyway. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I do want to, follow up on this whole entire thing to let you know about my experience with working with Ron and AtWorks and their whole entire team there, is that they're very agile. When something comes up, they're quick to address it. Even if your company, even if you're on their platforms and your company has a unique type of scenario that you want to make sure that the system accommodates, they're very actively listening. They make adjustments where they can, and it's very in a timely manner. It's Ron and his team have been phenomenal to work through this whole entire process. And this CMMC module here is just one example. The issue started coming up, and he immediately started saying, okay, how is this going to affect the small businesses? What can we do to help them out and to help them understand this process? So, I mean, they're coming from a framework and a mindset of making sure that we're not only educated about it, but that we have the tools in order to address these issues as well in a cost-effective manner, which is extremely important.
Yeah. Thanks, Shirley.
Well, I guess we'll go ahead and close the panel out in the session. I want to thank everybody for attending today. Michelle, if you have any other comments, if you're online, or helping close us out, but if anybody has any final comments, we're a little past the original 2:30 hour, but I know we had a little extra time added on anyhow, but I know folks probably have things to do this Friday afternoon. And thanks for the opportunity to manage the panel. I really appreciate it.
No, and that was great. Thank you so much to everybody that participated in today's panel. I mean, this was absolutely wonderful. You guys covered a lot of key topics, and also not only did you address the issues, but a potential solution. So that's awesome. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free to shoot an email. We will be sharing the registered participants with the panelists. So in case with follow-up, they'll be able to reach out. As I mentioned, the recording will be posted in the virtual summit agenda, which kind of itemizes all the presentations that we have. And we do still have some more presentations to come, but we're getting close to the end of that month, which is, you know, kind of a bittersweet for me because I'm a little bit sleepy. So,
Victor, can you put up a slide for how to contact you? And
Yes. If you bring it up, Robert, it's.
There we go.
there we go.
By the way, you could always go to our website, www.atworksys.com, but please give me an email directly. And then those of you who have access to the JAMA system, it'll be in there, the PowerPoint presentation. And for others, again, contact me and I'll get it to them.
Absolutely. And thank you guys so much. Please,
Anything
nobody
else,
ever
Lauren?
contacts me about accounting questions. I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not going to give any help. Without further ado,
Well, guys, I'd say Shirley is your resource.
exactly.
For
Yeah, I will
accounting
100% forward your
Shirley
email
is
to
your
her, who
resource.
then will send it to AtWorks. I won't even touch it. I'll just be like, no.
all right.
So thank you
Thank you.
guys.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Michelle. Good luck to the HUBZone folks. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.